So, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Sharon Whiteman, and I love being here with Manatech Australasia and the Globe every Saturday morning with my co-partners, Diana Hunter and Gary Knapp. We appreciate each and every one of you, and we love what we do here. So today we are very excited to have Dr. Steve Nugent. He's so committed to our region and the globe, and he never, well, I want to encourage him to say no sometimes because he's going to have to start, but he's always puts his hand up to assist us. Many of you, I know I can see that there's new people joining us today, whether you're watching this live on Saturday morning on the 25th of July or later down the track in the archives. A big warm welcome to you. Now, Dr. Steve Nugent is Manatech's Chief Science Officer and Chairman of the Global Scientific Advisory Board. He has more than 40 years of experience in the area of integrative medicine. He has tested more than 6,000 dietary supplement products and formulated more than 100. He is internationally recognized as an expert in his field and has been teaching doctors for more than 30 years. He is Manatech's most requested speaker worldwide. He's earned multiple degrees, graduating with top honors at both the undergraduate and graduate levels. His areas of studies include integrative medicine, health and wellness psychology, leadership psychology, organizational psychology, neuropsychology, biological anthropology, nutrition science, and business administration. Dr. Nugent has served as president of the International Association of Complementary Medicine, as president emeritus of the American Naturopathic Medical Association. He is professional member of the American College of Nutrition. He was also awarded the Servant's Heart Award by Manatech Associates in 2007. Dr. Nugent is one of Australasia's favorites. He carries the heart for the health, well-being, and education of all he meets. He's passionate about giving the power of wellness back into the hands of everyday people. You know, one of our biggest messages is you've got way more power to improve your level of wellness than what we're generally educated that we can. So Dr. Nugent, I'm very excited to have this further validation of Ambrotose. I mean, something we've known for 20 some years because we've all been consuming it and reaping the rewards. So thank you for being here. I know you've had a really busy week.
It's been a very long, rough, and tiring week. It's early evening for me here in Texas.
Hope you're going to have a nice glass of red after you're done with us.
Yeah, I think I just might do that. And a
All right,
glass of Australian red.
Yeah, exactly. I'll go off camera, but I'm here for anything you need.
Okay. Well, good evening or I should say good morning. I'm sorry, it's evening for me. I apologize. Good morning to all of you in Australasia. It's always a pleasure for me to talk to my friends there, and I have to say I miss you folks. I miss not traveling down there to see you, and anyway, at least this is one way for us to communicate. Well, Sharon asked me if I would be willing to talk about our latest study that we and of course, I love science so much. I'm always ready to talk about science and about studies. So that's what we're going to do. I'll start with a little information about studies in general, because I do get a lot of questions about that. In fact, some of the questions that have come up frequently on the drnugent.com website have been, can you please explain to us, how do I read a study? How do I get the meat out of what the study actually means and so on? Because some of them are pretty complicated. But we'll go through some of the basics for you this morning, for you there in Australasia. And all right, first of all, let's talk about the author, or I should say the lead researcher of this study. There were many doctors involved in this study. The lead researcher is Dr. Richard Bloomer, who just happens to be a member of our scientific advisory board. And of course, we've got some great scientists on our Global Scientific Advisory Board, I'm very pleased to say. So a little bit about Dr. Bloomer. He's a full professor at the University of Memphis, which is located in the state of Tennessee in the United States, in case you didn't know. And as a full professor, he is also the director of the School of Health Studies, the School of Cardiorespiratory and Metabolic Studies as well. And he is also the director of the Center for Nutraceutical and dietary supplement research. Wow. So Dr. Bloomer, his primary area of expertise is in cardiometabolic health and oxidative stress and antioxidant therapies. So this really was a good direction for him to go in for this particular study. That's really why we asked him to conduct this study. And he has been either the lead author or the co-author of 150 different peer-reviewed journal publications, as well as book chapters as well. So he's got a lot of experience as a researcher and as a published author, and that says a lot right off the bat when you're talking about any study. Now, I mentioned that this study is a peer-reviewed study. Well, what does that mean? A peer-reviewed study means that it's been, after it's completed, it's submitted to the peer review panel of a health journal, whatever that journal is. In this case, the journal is called Nutrients. And I'll tell you something more about nutrients in a minute. But in a peer-reviewed journal, what occurs is you have scientists a panel of scientists, so not one person, but an entire panel of scientists who are all qualified in the area to assess the study. And they assess the study, they analyze the study to see if it meets the highest level of academic research so that it can in fact be published. So for me, if it's not published in a peer-reviewed journal, because there are journals that are not peer-reviewed journals, and if it's not published in a peer-reviewed journal, I tend not to think too much of it, because I think that all science, no matter how much I trust the scientists, as I certainly trust Dr. Bloomer, but no matter how much I trust the scientist, I want all scientific research to be reviewed by a panel of their peers. And so that's very important. So it's published in a peer-reviewed journal. By the way, if you're going to talk to your doctor, as an example, and your doctor says, "Do you have any science about your products?" And then you can respond by saying, "Yes, we do. In fact, we have double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized trials which are published in peer-reviewed journals." Well, that's exactly what your doctor is asking for. When he says, "Do you have science? Do you have evidence? Do you have proof?" That's exactly what he means. That's what he wants. So, or she. And so this particular study is titled An Assessment of the Glyconutrient Ambrotose. That's right. It was just done outright on Ambrotose. No secrets here. On immunity, gut health, and safety in men and women. A placebo-controlled, double-blind, randomized clinical trial. Now, let me explain to you what all that means. All right. In a placebo control, what you have is some material which is packaged identically to your test material, so that visually and in a tactile sense, when you feel it and touch it, you cannot tell the difference between the active material that you want to test and the placebo material, which has no activity. So it's something that's inert and will have no activity towards whatever it is you're attempting to test. So with this in mind, that's the placebo. But what about the double-blind part? What does that mean? All right. In a double-blind study, what occurs is that neither the researchers administering the tests nor the test subjects have any idea who's getting the real stuff and who's getting the placebo. In other words, someone puts together all of the material. So in this case, this was powder in this case, and somebody puts together all of the material, and it's all packaged in neutral packages that have no kinds of labels or identification, other than for subject 1, subject 2, and that kind of thing. So we know which person got what material, okay? And then the person administering the test does not know what the material is. And the person receiving the material does not know what the material is. So that's why it's Both sides are blinded to the information. That's why it's called double blind. What about randomized? What does that mean? That means that rather than picking the people you want to pick, it's completely, the people are totally chosen at random. So when you have a randomized study, why is that better? It's better because you further eliminate any possibility of bias in constructing the study, conducting the study, and reporting the study. So that's very, very important. So what you have here is a double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized clinical trial, which, my friends, is the gold standard for scientific study. In other words, this is as good as it gets. Now, this is our 18th study that we now have published, and some of you who've been with the company for a very long time, you may remember that before the laws changed about 12 years ago, maybe getting closer to 13 years now. Before those laws changed, Manatech had almost 5,000 studies, papers, scientific book chapters, etc. So we had a lot of data. And that's why we know so much about what our products do. However, when the law changed, it said, you can no longer publish anything that has anything to do with disease treatment. Well, that eliminated almost everything that we had ever done starting in 1995 forward. So we had to kind of start all over again. And scientific studies are very expensive. Ooh, very expensive. I'll give you more on that in a minute. So we're now at 18, I'm very, very proud to say, 18 studies. And I'm pretty much obsessed with science. So now that I'm chief of science, I'm making everybody crazy. And I mean everybody about having more studies. In fact, just today, I made another appeal to the board of directors. And as a public company, we have to go through the board of directors. And I said, I'd like a study on everything. And of course, everyone laughed. And I said, I'm not kidding. but we're not going to get a study on everything. The point is, this study is very good, very useful, very important. So I'm just thinking about everyone's reaction when I said that this morning. But we are going to have more studies. We are definitely going to get back on the track of having regular studies. For a long time, we had big gaps in our studies, but that's not going to happen anymore. So we are going to have regular studies published. Now, this particular study, just to give you a couple of ideas about how these things work, how long they take, how much money it takes. The concept for this study was hatched almost 2 years ago. Now, the study itself was conducted over an 8-week period, but there has to be time for study design and approvals, and then there's the legal stuff, and there's all these things that have to be done. So it's not like you can just sort of flip a switch and do as many studies as you want whenever you want. Boy, I wish that'd be so great if you could. Most scientific studies are going to cost at least a bare minimum of 120,000 US dollars, and I think that's somewhere in the neighborhood of about 170,000 Australian dollars. Someone will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's pretty close. And a lot of studies that are really worthwhile, you're getting up there into the 200,000 US dollar range and even higher. So studies are very expensive. And one of the reasons that almost none of our competitors have scientific studies on their products. Now, they talk about scientific study, but they're talking about scientific studies on ingredients that they buy. They're not talking about scientific studies on the products that they make and sell. There's a big difference. So this is a study which is specifically about 2 Ambrotose products. Now, as those of you who are already associates, the guests won't know this yet, of course, but those of you who are associates, you know that Manatech has several Ambrotose technologies, and that's the correct way for us to say it, to maintain our trademarks and all that legal stuff. Okay, and I'm not I'm not much on the legal side. I'm just a science guy, but still, we need to say that. This study studied advanced Ambrotose and Ambrotose Life. And the purpose of this study, which again, this was conducted at the Center for Nutraceuticals and Dietary Supplement Research at the School of Health Studies at the University of Memphis. And there's quite a list of scientists who were involved in this study. Dr. Bloomer was the lead, but quite a few people involved. Again, the purpose was to study the effects on the immune system of Ambrotose and gut health and safety. And that's always important for us at Manatech. Safety is always a huge issue for us. We don't want anyone taking anything which is not safe. And I usually, personally, when I get associates who say, is this safe? I kind of feel a little bit offended. I mean, I know that they don't mean to offend me, but why in the world would I endorse or formulate anything that wasn't safe? I mean, that's just a crazy question. Anyway, so in this study, Dr. Bloomer selected 75 men and women, and these 75 men and women range between the ages of 20 and 65. So he could get a really nice variation in ages, because we know that there are a lot of things that occur at certain ages, certain changes that occur at age 28. And I don't know how many of you are aware of this, but your peak, your absolute cellular peak of your entire life is going to be around the age of 28. Literally, you begin cellular decline in your 29th year. Now that decline is very minor, it's very slow, but that's when you begin decline. This is why when physicians who are being responsible, and make sure I say this correctly, I don't want anyone offended or anyone to misunderstand. There are women who choose to have children later in life, and of course that is their choice. But a responsible physician will let that woman know that her peak, her physical peak, was 28. If she has a child before 28, that child has the highest probability of peak health in virtually every aspect of their body, from all the physical aspects to mental health to the whole thing. And as you go beyond 28 now, the risk factors begin to increase slowly, but they begin to increase. And so that's why 28 is one of those first markers. Your next marker is about age 40. And that's the time that you see a lot of the obvious kinds of stuff. It's usually after the age of 40 that if somebody's going to need reading glasses, that's when they first are told by their eye doctor, yep, it's time for reading glasses for you. Now, for many people, that is a much later age. And for some people, it never happens. But 40 is a marker. And it's more than eyesight. It's all manner of things. Enzymes, as an example. Your body begins to make less digestive enzymes starting at age 28. By the age of 40, you are now producing digestive enzymes at about -1% per year. So that by the time you're 50, you're now at about 10% less efficient digestion. When you hit 60, about 20% less efficient digestion, and so on. And this is why we see a number of nutrition-related health problems that get worse as you age. And there's another reason to take dietary supplements, isn't it? All right, so your next marker is going to be around 60-ish mark, and then the markers start to come in much faster. So then 70 and so on. So what Dr. Bloomer did, he starts at 20, he goes to 65. He wants to get a wide range of effects. Now, in this particular test, what he wanted to do is to only test the effects on healthy people. So here's the requirements that he required for this study. All of them had to come to the test with no diagnosis of any kind of cardiovascular health issues, no metabolic health issues, no neurological disease issues, and all of them had to certify that they were not, I repeat, not taking any kind of dietary supplement or medication that could have any effect on immune health or gut health or well-being. And I'm going to talk about well-being in this study because they were a very interesting finding on well-being in this study, which I think is always important, obviously. In fact, all of the women in the study had to be tested. They had to agree to be tested using a urine pregnancy test to ensure that they were not pregnant, because Dr. Bloomer was absolutely emphatic that there must be no safety risk to anybody. And of course, until you've done the test to establish safety, you can't be certain. And each time that the women came for their blood tests, they again had to take the urine pregnancy test. Also, 48 hours before each time that the test subjects came to the laboratory to have their blood drawn and their various other tests done, because they had a series of other tests done as well, they had to have no alcohol 48 hours before coming in for the blood test, because that can also affect a lot of these factors that were tested in this particular study. So this study was designed in a very meticulous fashion. Our science staff worked with Dr. Bloomer to design the study, and it was done just extremely well in its design. Also, on day one and on each of the 3 repeat visits, everyone had their anthropomorphic measurements done, so their body measurements, all right, to see what changes may or may not occur. They all had to fill out a daily diet record every day, or they would be out of compliance and they would have to leave the study. So every person had to write down every day everything they ate from the time they woke up to the time they went to sleep. And these daily diet records then were also put into the total of data that was used to draw the conclusions at the end of this study. So you can see there's a lot of things being done here. And when the test subjects come in to get their tests done, of course, they have a blood draw, and the blood is drawn in what are called heparinized tubes, and that's to make sure that there isn't any blood clotting that goes on before they can spin down the blood and so on. Also, every test subject has to have the basics done. They have the basic checks on the heart and pulse, blood pressure, and so on. So all of these things had to be done each time they came in, again, to see, are there any changes? Now, in the blood tests, what they're looking for are a number of factors which could relate to, as I talked about, the purpose of this particular study, that could relate to either immune factors or gut health factors. Very, very important. We're going to be talking a lot about gut health in the coming months, by the way. But the gut health factors are very important. And of course, once again, they're also testing for well-being here, which I found it interesting that the first suggestion that came up with that, and considering that one of my degrees is a doctorate in psychology, I thought, wow, this is novel. Let's give this a shot and see if Ambrotose does have this general effect on general well-being that we can report, that we can analyze and report. So with this, what's happening is they are using 3 different, now these tests are subjective because these are self-assessments. However, although they're subjective, the psychologists that have put these tests together are experts in this area of research. And these 3 tests are well respected globally as tests that can give you pretty reliable responses, because it's all in the way that you design the question to try and help you get a better response, a more objective response. Even though it is opinion, it is the perspective of the test subjects, it's how they feel. So the three tests were the SF-12, which is a very well-known self-reported assessment of general well-being, psychological well-being, and general feeling of well-being physically as well. Also, another self-report, which is the Psychological General Well-Being Index, and that's another highly respected, very well-researched test, which is administered. Again, it is a self-report. However, it's very well constructed. And then there was also a self-reported assessment of fatigue and associated variables. And this is a visual analog scale in which the subject is asked to mark on a 100 millimeter scale, indicating how he or she feels regarding whichever the question is, whatever the question is. So those were three assessments for well-being. Going back to the blood test, something else that was done in the blood test is Dr. Bloomer is looking to see if there are changes in various types of cells. He's looking for changes in things called monocytes and things called cytokines. So interleukin 10, interleukin 6, interleukin 1 beta, TNF, and so on, for those of you who care about the highly technical stuff. Let's go back to the simple way to look at this. Cytokines go up in response to inflammation. They also go up in response to different types of immune challenges, not all, but different types. So what he's looking for here, and before I forget, let me reinforce something for everyone listening. Mannatech is a global community. We have friends, contacts, and business associates that are in 27 different countries. In the United States, it is no longer allowed to say the word inflammation or inflammatory. We can't say those words. Now, I'm talking to folks in Australasia right now, but if any of you should talk about this to someone in the US, I just want to caution you, you cannot use the word inflammatory or inflammation in the United States. I know that's crazy. I don't, trust me, I'm so frustrated by it. It's insane. Anyway, you can't do it in the US, but you can do it in Australia and in New Zealand and in Singapore. So I'm going to talk about it here. So one of the things that Dr. Bloomer is finding out from these blood tests is that there are no inflammatory responses going on when using the Ambrotose technologies. Well, that's very important. Now, of course, all of these individuals are healthy. None of them are suffering from any type of disease. But what we see from this is one of several indicators that tell us that Ambrotose is an immunomodulator. You've heard me say that before. And a lot of people, and maybe some of you have seen me explain it on screen, because I show it visually. But immunomodulator, what does that mean? And why is this so important for us? This study confirms, and in fact, we have it in writing in this study, and that's part of what makes it gold. I mean, just really gold. You can have immune suppression. You can have immune stimulation. And then you can have a healthy immune response, which is immune modulation. Modulation means that if your immune system is functioning above normal, and there are a number of conditions when that occurs, then it modulates down to normal. If your immune system is weak and it needs to go up to normal, it modulates up to normal. Because if you do stimulation, there are all manner of problems with that, especially for people who suffer from health problems where their immune system is always too high. And if you use a suppressant for those individuals, you are now likely to make those individuals susceptible to infection and illness. So you don't really want to do a suppressant. You don't want to do a stimulant. You want to do a modulator. I've been saying for years that Manipul and Ambrotose are both immunomodulatory. All of our studies up through about 13 years ago, no matter what the response was, the researchers always used the word immune stimulation. And I always protested, but it didn't matter. You can't interfere with a researcher. They have to write what they write. So you can't tell them, oh, you have to change that. You can't, that's not permitted. But I would always argue it after they had written their manuscripts and gotten published. And like, why did you use those words? Because that's the way they think. That was their psychology. They're thinking about, oh, let's stimulate the immune system. Well, if they got a very good immune response for individuals with weak immune systems, then that's the way they saw it. But what it really was immune modulation, not immune stimulation. And this study supports that. And that's why I think that it's one of the aspects of this study that is pure gold. In fact, let me see if I can find, it's quite a long study here. Let me see if I can find the line. So I want to find the exact verbiage that Dr. Bloomer used in this final. Okay, here we go. These findings show Ambrotose supplementation is likely an immune system modulator, as opposed to being an immune system stimulator. So that's very, very important. And now that is in a peer-reviewed, published paper. So when anyone comes to you and says, well, I have conchus of the bronchus, and that means my immune system is functioning too high, and I don't want to take anything that boosts my immune system. Well, no, you don't, and no one else should either. And that's not what we do at Manitech. We do immune modulation. That is really cool, folks. I mean, that's really, really important. The vast majority of people who buy dietary supplements are females over 40. The vast majority of those people who buy supplements are females over 50 who have a health challenge. And the vast majority of their health challenges are, guess what? Their immune systems are operating too high. Their immune systems are operating above normal, which is why they have their health challenges. An immune modulator would be perfect for them. All right, I got a little off track because I get all excited about that immune modulator stuff. All right, so then what he did was he divided the test subjects. There were 75 participants, and he divided them into 5 groups. One group, of course, received a placebo, but nobody knew that. Even the doctors doing the testing didn't know which were the placebo and which were, because you can psychologically affect it. If you know which is the real deal, and you could do it by your gestures, by your tone of voice, by the expression on your face, and that might influence the person on the placebo. So that's why it needs to be double blind. Very important. The other 4 groups were divided this way. One group with advanced Ambrotose getting 2 grams a day, one group with advanced Ambrotose getting 4 grams a day, and then one group of Ambrotose Life getting 2 grams a day, and one group with Ambrotose Life getting 4 grams a day. So 5 total groups that were studied. All groups ended up showing safety results, that there was no issues, there was nothing that came up in blood tests at all or the other tests that showed any kinds of safety issues. Something else that's extraordinary about this test, it's pretty rare, and I know that we have a few scientists in Australasia, and some of them might be listening to this. It's pretty darn rare to recruit a cohort of test subjects and have all of them complete the test. I mean, it really is very unusual. It's very, very rare. The studies I've done, well, anyway, it's rare. Okay. So of the 75 participants, 74 completed everything. And one of the 75 was a female who, in her 6th week of the 8-week test, said she thought she was having some gastrointestinal distress from what turned out to be Ambrotose Life at 4 grams. And of course, she didn't know that, and the researcher didn't know that either. So she thought that that might be it, and she wanted to stop taking the supplement. So she stopped taking it at 6 weeks. We have her data up through 6 weeks, but she decided to keep coming back for each test through the end of the 8 weeks. She actually did complete the test. She just didn't complete the test with the Ambrotose Life those last 2 weeks. But everyone else, 74 people, completed everything and were fully compliant. That's also pretty unusual in a scientific test. Actually, very unusual. So this turned out to be just extraordinarily good, extraordinarily well done. So first it shows us there's no changes that relate to any kind of safety issue at all. Zero, nothing. Next, we see that there are no indicators of inflammation from either of the 2 products taken in healthy individuals. And that's a good thing. That's a safety thing as well. And we see that there are significant, in scientific studies, they use the term statistically significant. So you have to be above a certain statistical value to say this sampling is statistically significant or it's not statistically significant. And what they found with statistical significance is that Ambrotose appears to be an immunomodulator, and I love that. I just love it. And I love it because scientists can read this forever, and you can read this forever. How is that cool? You have 3 kinds of journals. One type of science journal will be a journal where you could not read a study, a published study, unless you bought a subscription to the journal. And of course, you'll have to keep renewing that subscription. Then there's another kind of journal where you can log on and you can see the abstract, and that's the opening paragraph. That's like the quick look summary of the total study. But I have to warn you that not all abstracts are well written. In fact, I've seen some abstracts that I would read the abstract, and then after reading the study, I'd think, this person did not know how to write an abstract, because the abstract did not set up accurately what occurred in the study. So I just want to say that to all of you. If you're the type of individual who will go to a science site and only read the abstract, and you think you know what the study's about, maybe you do and maybe you don't. So a little caution there, all right? Because abstracts are written by human beings, and some human beings are better writers than others. I mean, it's not like it's some sort of robotic thing where they all pump out accurately all the time, because they don't always. And I could spend time talking about a number of them that were misleading, but we won't do that today. So after you read through the abstract, and then afterwards you start reading down all the material, and you read about the method and how they set up the individuals, how they conducted the tests. She goes through all the statistics that are involved, and there's usually pages and pages and pages of statistics and charts, bar charts, graphs, you name it, because that's what scientists want to see for their comparisons. You get through all that. Then as you go further down, you'll probably come to a section, not in every study, but in most studies, there'll be a discussion section. And the discussion section will try to re-summarize some of the data that you've just read, which usually leads you into the final paragraph, which is the conclusion section. And don't just read abstracts and conclusions. Again, you might be missing the meat of what you're really looking for if you do that. And I know that the statistical stuff is kind of tough for some people. Not everybody enjoys reading statistics. In fact, I would guess most people don't enjoy reading statistics. All right. I'm sorry, I got off track again. Back to the blood tests. So back on the blood test, they're also testing, remember they're looking at gut health here. So they're also testing, looking at a protein, which is called zonulin. Zonulin in serum, in blood, serum means blood, is an indicator for how permeable the cell wall is of your intestinal wall. Now, when I say that to some people, they go, oh my gosh, permeable, my intestinal wall? Yes. In fact, for many, many, many years, naturopaths, sometimes chiropractors, but doctors who were keyed into the natural approach to health would very often talk about leaky gut syndrome. Only recently, only in the last few years, have medical doctors begun slowly, and they don't all accept this, by the way, so we won't generalize, but many medical doctors have slowly begun to accept the fact that there is something called leaky gut syndrome, that some people do actually have permeability of the wall of their intestines, which allows for toxic material to pass through the intestines and into the body. Ooh, that's not good, is it? And in fact, leaky gut syndrome then is something that can be related to a very long list of health challenges. In fact, there are some practitioners, and I have to emphasize, absolute proof of what I'm about to say does not exist yet. Perhaps it never will, or perhaps it will. We'll see scientifically. But there are many practitioners who believe that leaky gut syndrome is responsible for the majority of health problems, particularly immune problems and neurological problems and autoimmune problems. Now, they may be right, maybe not. More study is needed. We'll have to see. We do also know that there is a chemical now which is commonly being used in commercial farming, which definitely does affect your gut permeability. And that's not a good thing, folks. Definitely not. If some of this toxic material, let's say that you had leaky gut syndrome, and probably some of you listening to this call do, but let's say you did, and that toxic material passed through the intestinal wall into your blood, you might have all manner of health issues, and some of them can be quite significant. So the test for serum zonulin was very, very important. And what did he find? Individuals using the Ambrotose had consistently normal levels of serum zonulin. This is also good in terms of gut health. And once again, keep in mind, the test was done only on healthy individuals. No one with any kind of a health issue was actually tested on this. So these are all healthy people. All of them, throughout the 8-week study, we had normal blood pressure, normal heart rate, normal general indicators of health. And very, very interesting on the well-being, individuals who are using these self-assessments that I talked about a few moments ago, there was a statistically significant improvement in well-being as indicated by these self-report indexes in the individuals using Ambrotose, but not a statistically significant change in those using the placebo. So this was very important as well. There definitely seems to be, through these 3 assessments, there definitely seems to be in this double-blind test a very strong indicator that Ambrotose technologies improve your general sense of well-being. And folks, these days, a lot of people can use that. I can't speak for everyone in every country, but I can tell you what, in my country, the stress levels are off the charts, just ridiculous. and they're not getting better. So with this in mind, I think anything that can improve your sense of well-being is a very, very positive thing. Now, all of these test subjects I mentioned had to do a daily diet record, and they had to turn this in each time. And again, amazingly, my hat is off to Dr. Bloomer and his team, because everybody, every single person in this study actually completed their, I say that because compliance like this just doesn't happen. They actually completed their daily dietary surveys and brought them in each time. Just amazing, astounding. Everyone was told not to change their regular dietary habits at all, no changes. And of course, they all did that. They maintained however they normally ate, because we again wanted to see, will this have any change on immune function or gut health if we do that. Now, with the inflammatory factors, as I mentioned, they were all normal and steady. I mean, there were no changes up or down with them. And they were all normal to begin with. Everyone had normal monocyte levels, normal cytokine, normal interleukin, etc. All of them did. So, and that's great that that didn't change either. What we saw too was that the differences between advanced Ambrotose and Ambrotose Life were not super big. They were pretty close. A little bit better with Ambrotose Life, but they were pretty close. And with this in mind, we now know that those individuals, because we have a lot of countries, in fact, 6 of our countries, never had Ambrotose complex at all. In fact, they didn't even know it existed. All they had was advanced Ambrotose. And we've been trying to get everybody to switch over. And because we know that for individuals who are not healthy, remember, these are all healthy individuals, okay? But for individuals who are not healthy, more manopole is the key. And there's more than twice as much manopole in complex and in life than there is in advanced. So we've been trying to get everybody to switch over, and we wanted to be able to have a test that would show that no one was going to lose any ground if they switched over. And remember, we're not permitted to study disease anymore. So that's the approach we had to take. And it worked beautifully. What we saw was really, really perfect. So then, we had only one individual with any discomfort out of the 75 test subjects, which is astounding. And that was one individual using Ambrotose Life. And by the way, we are not permitted to talk about particulars which can identify an individual. I can't speak to every country and all the standards in every country, but in the US, the identity of a test subject must always be protected so that no one knows who the individual was. And that's a law in the US, and that is followed strictly. So I can tell you it was a woman, and that's all I'm going to tell you. That's it. So we're not going to talk about age or anything else. Okay. So with this, and again, it was very minor for her, just some minor gastrointestinal discomfort, and it was her option and her choice to stop taking Ambrotose Life after 6 weeks. Of course, heck, if she was an associate, she wasn't. None of the people in this test were associates. But if she was, I'd just say, oh, give her some complex. I mean, that's that would have been my response. All right. So again, there was no change with the blood pressure, heart rate, any of that stuff, all positive. The serum zonulin concentrations were either normal or even adjusted to a more positive fashion for gut health. So that shows some support for gut health as well. Again, these are healthy individuals we're talking about, no one with any kind of GI disorder or disease, okay? And just overall, this test is great, but the main thing that is most exciting to me is that we have it in writing in a peer-reviewed journal that the immunomodulatory effect. So when I think I probably didn't finish on the 3 types of journal. The 3rd type of journal is the journal that's free, and that's this journal, Nutrients. So you can look up this study. Of course, you can go right to our website and do it that way as well if you want, manatechscience.org, which if it isn't posted yet, it should be posted. And if it's not posted yet, we'll have the link for it. But you can go right to the journal itself. Again, it's called Nutrients. The researcher is Dr. Richard Bloomer. And let me get right up and I'll read the exact title to you again so you can look this up if you choose. And the article title is An Assessment of the Glyconutrient Ambrotose on Immunity, Gut Health, and Safety in Men and Women, a placebo-controlled, double-blind, randomized clinical trial. So we have this evidence of safety. We have the evidence that there is no change in inflammatory factors from these 2 products in any healthy test subject. Again, these are healthy test subjects, so I have to keep emphasizing that. And we have the evidence that gut health is supported via the serum zonulin test. And most important, we have now in print in a peer-reviewed health journal that Ambrotose technologies are immunomodulators, not immunostimulators. And I love that. I love that because that's the best thing you can offer to anybody around the world. It's the perfect thing if the immune system is weak. It's the perfect thing if the immune system is overactive. It's the perfect thing for good health, and that's Ambrotose. So that's it. And I'm going to, hopefully that was clear. I hope I didn't ramble too much. And I'm going to turn this back over to Sharon.
Wow, there's a lot of gratitude and a couple questions in the chat, Dr. Nugent. Thank you so much for that. It's an exciting day for Manatech, really, isn't it?
Excuse me, I was taking a sip of water.
So just to clarify, I know you said it a few different ways, but the study covered Ambrotose Life and Ambrotose, Advanced Ambrotose.
Yes.
What does that mean for Classic or Complex?
Well, actually, Complex and Ambrotose Life are almost identical. The formulations are different by only 5 milligrams of mannitol, which is, it's not significant. And that's because the marketing department wanted to be able to say there's more mannitol in Life than there is in Complex. So they threw in 5 milligrams. It's like, okay. The only other differences between Complex and Life is the fact that Complex is in a base of rice starch and Life is in a base of rice bran. And of course, Life has some detox factors in it. Complex does not. And the final thing would be something that Life and Advanced share, and that is they both have wakame in them. Otherwise, the formulas are the same. The new batches of Ambrotose Complex, it's one of the first things I did as Chief of Science was order that we change out the shellfish source glucosamine in Complex in favor of a plant source glucosamine, because I wanted to eliminate that problem for everyone that had religious issues or that had any kind of other issue around that. That was a simple thing for me to do. So that's been done. I'm not sure if that change in Complex has reached Australia yet, but it has been done. So in the future, new batches will come with the plant source if you don't have it already. Otherwise, the formulas are really the same. So I suspect that the woman who had the issue with her gut probably was about the detox agents, because really life is pretty much complex. in virtually every other respect, whereas advanced has some different formula changes in it that are, some of them are significant versus life. I think we're in reasonably good shape. Had I been involved in the design of this study, which it was not my decision, because at the time I was not the chief of science, and I did ask that we test for complex, but that would have increased the study cost by about another 25,000 US dollars. So I said, well, you know, complex and life are so close. Let's not add the extra money. So they didn't. And that's the best answer I can give you.
Okay, perfect. And um, we've put the links in the chat for both the study itself and also for the sort of layperson's evaluation of that on All About Manatech. Will it also go to Manatech Science?
Yeah, it should be. If it hasn't posted yet, it will be posted. You know, when you go to Manatech Science, there's a tab that says Publications, and you just click on that, because I know that you know, Sharon, but some of your folks listening may not know.
Yeah.
So you click on Publications, and then all the studies come up in various groups and categories. We are very short-staffed. You know, we had layoffs earlier in the year of nearly 30 people. So it's been a real challenge for us to keep up the postings on Manatech Science, but it will be. If it's not posted yet, it will be.
And one final question. Why do they use like words like likely or appears to be? Why can't they just say it is what it is?
well, well, Sharon, you already know the answer to that question, but for a lot of people, they don't. Because for those of you who don't know, because Sharon never brags about herself, and she sure should, but she doesn't. And, you know, Sharon is a nurse, and she knows a great deal about science and health, and she never brags to anybody, but she already understands most of this stuff. The reason that they do this, for everyone else listening, is because the key to good science is objectivity. And if you can't be fully objective, you're never going to get approved for a peer-reviewed journal. When you use words like definite, then you better have absolutely 100% what's called a p-value. You better have 100% statistical variation, and that's pretty much impossible. So, I mean, even if you have, if we had 75 people that all came out with exactly the same standard of markers, we still, and you'd never get published if you said, this is definitely this, and it's positively that. You just never get published. So you have to use words which are more objective to make sure that there are no chance that it looks like there's a bias or an opinion or a perception. So that's why they say the most common word is suggests. You know, this data suggests. Okay, well, it's like in the study that I did on the body composition index. The data was so close to perfect. It was literally 0.0001% from perfect, but I still had to say the data suggests, and otherwise I wouldn't have got published. So,
How criminal is that, Dr. Nugent?
yeah, I know, it's awful. You hate it. You just hate it. Yeah.
Well, Dr. Nugent, there's so much gratitude in the chat. And I know you being able to educate us in such an in-depth way increases the quality of conversations we have with people that are really looking and praying for what we have. So thank you so very, very much. Enjoy your glass of Australian Red and have a restful weekend, I hope.
Yeah, well, it's going to be a busy weekend, lots to do. We're getting ready for US Manifest and all kinds of other stuff. And we've got a lot of new product and science stuff going on that I can't talk about yet, but lots and lots of stuff going on. We are cranking up science, everybody. We are cranking it up.
How exciting. How exciting. Dr. Nugent, have a rest. God bless you. Thanks so very much. And everybody have a great weekend. And as soon as I know, I'll let you know what we're doing next Saturday. See you guys. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.